Water. Oh, there you are. Babe, you're never gonna believe this. I think I managed to hurt my wrist from spanking you so high, everybody. What are you doing in my kitchen? I told you I was gonna teach you the difference between boundaries, agreements, and rules today. Isn't that next weekend? I could have sworn I said that, huh? Let me just check my phone, my Google Calendar app. Can even be polyamorous and not have Google Calendar. Yes, you're right. I'm so sorry. I got my Saturdays completely mixed up, apparently. Oh, no. You don't need to apologize. That's my mistake. Yeah, I can do this. I can make this work. Why don't you just make yourself comfortable? I was in the middle of tying someone up. I was tied up. I was tied up with something. I wasn't tied. There was a tie. Don't worry about it. I'll just take care of that and maybe throw in a rope. And then we'll have that conversation that I promised, and it'll be great. Fuck! Stay hydrated, folks. Okay, I think that seems a tad more appropriate. I don't have my normal song and dance prepared for you like I do with other videos, but considering the subject matter, I think we can kind of rip through this rather quickly. And then I can get back to what I was in the middle of. It's okay. They're into denial. This is all consensual. So, boundaries, agreements, and rules. 3 words used with such ambiguity by some that they essentially are the same thing. But for myself and others, they are 3 words with very specific uses and meanings. Now, this is definitely not a new subject. Plenty of smarter, cooler people with much larger audiences than me have definitely discussed this before. And I'm sure future Mandy will include some of those links down below in the description box. However, I wanted to take a moment to give my spin on this conversation for 2 big reasons. Number 1, this channel is about education, and moving forward, having a sort of established definition of what these words mean is going to help me for future topics I hope to cover. And number 2, none of those other people have big boobs as I do. So, unique perspective coming at you. You might even say it's a titillating take. I would apologize, but y'all know it wouldn't be authentic. Now, the way that I have personally come to understand these words and their different uses is to think of them as very specific I statements, we statements, and you statements. This is all gonna make sense, I promise. Let's start off with boundaries. Boundaries are I statements. They essentially are a way of protecting the speaker from having to do something or engage in activity that they would otherwise not like to do. Boundaries can be explicitly explored, figured out with the help of a therapist or a self-help book, and prepared ahead of time. Or they can be spur of the moment, instinctual, and sudden. Now, not all boundaries are like border steel walls. Sometimes they're more like a picket fence around a house with a swinging door. And they can vary a lot, covering a wide range of circumstances. They can cover anything from people you want to interact with, situations that you don't want to be a part of, or even just choosing to take a nap instead of meeting up with your friend for brunch because you're tired. I have a boundary that I've stated once in a previous video that I don't date heavy tobacco smokers. I've done it in the past, I didn't enjoy it for a wide range of reasons, and I don't ever want to do it again. So to turn this into a proper I statement, I would say, I don't date smokers. Maybe if you smoke like once every 6 months or only special occasions, we can talk, but otherwise, no thank you. The thing about this boundary, and honestly all boundaries, is that I never actually have to tell anybody this. This can just be something that guides myself and my own actions. In fact, sometimes it might be even kind of cruel to tell somebody a boundary. I don't need to tell the hot girl that I was interested in that my interest completely evaporated the moment I saw how many packs a day she was going through. Instead, I can just say, I just think we're incompatible, but I really wish you well, and leave it at that. It is on the person making the boundary to enforce it. All boundaries ideally should be worded in such a way that it's about what you, the speaker, will do and not dictate the other person's behavior. We'll talk about what those look like later on. Let's use another non-dating example. I have a lot of boundaries around how and when I will interact with certain members of my family. I'm not going to get into that giant traumatic bag of worms, but just for the sake of simplicity, let's just say you can sum it up by saying, I don't go over to Aunt Lydia's house. As far as I'm aware, I don't have an Aunt Lydia, so this shouldn't raise anybody's hackles. My boundary would quite likely never need to be discussed with anybody else. If I'm ever presented with the opportunity to go to Aunt Lydia's, like invited over for a family gathering or a stoning or whatever, I can just say, oh, no thank you, have fun though. My absence at Aunt Lydia's may be commented upon or noticed, but the boundary I've established really only dictates my behavior. It doesn't really affect them in any way. I am making decisions about what I will do. Me, myself, and I are the only ones who make the decision and then enforce it. Sometimes I've heard people say, well, I don't have boundaries at all. And that's a lie. Boundaries are simply you saying no. We've all said no at some point. If we didn't say no, you know what we'd end up? We'd end up like that Jim Carrey movie. We all remember how that ended. Actually, I don't. I only saw it the one time. Have you ever gone to a diner and the waitress came up to you and asked you, oh, would you like some coffee, dear? And you said, oh, no, thank you, I'm good. Guess what? That's a boundary. You knew what it wanted, it wasn't coffee, and you said no. Congratulations on prioritizing your needs. Next, agreements. Agreements are we statements. Unlike a boundary, an agreement is made with another person because it may affect their behavior, and therefore discussion is really a must. Let's build upon a previous example. The boundary, I don't date smokers. If I start dating a non-smoker who also doesn't date smokers, then we're in agreement that neither of us will smoke. How this might come up could happen honestly in a variety of ways between, just casually or even a very in-depth discussion about what we want in a relationship. The point is that we have a mutually agreed upon understanding about what we do and do not want. In this case, a profound desire to not get lung cancer. Agreements, much like boundaries, don't have to just come up in romantic situations, of course. Roommates are actually a really good example of people who might need to have agreements in order to live in a shared space. For example, they might have agreements such as, we agree to wash our own dishes, or we'll keep the living room, a shared community space, tidy at all times. Now, both of these agreements would likely require a bit more discussion, like, is there a time frame about how soon the dishes need to be done? What does tidy even mean to us? Things like that. But it's still an agreement. What are roommates? I don't even have roommates anymore. You all can deal with roommates. I beat the system. We just lie on the paycheck to paycheck now. Now, agreements don't have to be when you have these shared values or boundaries with other person or people. They do, though, have to be compatible ones. Sometimes people who are monogamous date people who are polyamorous. In these particular relationships, the two of them have some kind of agreement or understanding that while one partner may not have a desire for multiple ones, the other one is allowed to date as many people as they want. I actually can speak from experience about this because I currently have a partner who is monogamous even though I'm polyamorous. At least at time of recording, you never say never. Things change, but no pressure, honey. Whatever you want, I support you. In our case, the monogamous person's boundary is, I don't date more than one person. Not, I don't date people who date more than one person. It's a subtle difference, but an important one nevertheless. My boundary, on the other hand, is I won't date anyone who makes me be monogamous. Or maybe just put a little bit more of a positive spin in that, I might say, I only date people who are accepting of my non-monogamy. So when we came together and decided that we wanted to be sweeties, we had to be in agreement about non-monogamy being permissible. This might be worded in a couple of different ways, something like, we agree not to be exclusive, or we agree that Mandy gets to date as many people as she wants. I say might be, by the way, because typically agreements don't quite get worded in this way. It's usually a little bit more fluid. Human conversation tends to be a little bit more awkward, a little more casual, and not quite as precise. I like you, Rada boy. I like you too, Mandy. Do you think we should be partners? I do. That sounds great. It sounds great to me too. in the society? Darn tootin'! Yay! And now for the fucking! And that's where sock babies come from. Now, someone might find the idea of stated agreements to be one that they don't really agree with, as it were. And certainly I do think it's possible, and have even seen examples of people who never have explicit agreements stated, but do otherwise have healthy and happy relationships. But overall, I do still think that discussion, even to a casual degree, needs to be part of the agreement process, because otherwise you might cross a line of your partners that you didn't even know they had. I'm part relationship anarchist. Making assumptions in relationships makes me very anxious. A good example of this might be cheating. In monogamy, what constitutes cheating isn't really discussed very much. It's just sort of assumed. If you become emotionally, romantically, and or physically intimate with another human being outside of your monogamous relationship, that typically counts as cheating. In non-monogamy though, can one cheat? This gets discussed a lot actually. For some people, cheating is an inherently monogamous invention. Ergo, it cannot happen in non-monogamy no matter what you do. For other people, and this tends to be where I am, it actually depends on what your agreements are. While physical or romantic fidelity isn't part of the equation, if you break other agreements, that would constitute cheating. Hell, even in monogamy, there are examples of people disagreeing on what constitutes as cheating. For example, masturbating or watching porn without the other partner. So yeah, I personally don't think we should ever make assumptions about what is or isn't okay in our relationships, and should have those explicit conversations. So we've had boundaries, which are I statements. We've talked about agreements, which are we statements. And now we're going to talk about rules, which are you statements. But before I get on to that, a brief interruption for our sponsors. Yes, this video is sponsored. Sorta. Kinda. Okay, so let me explain. So if you follow me on social media, you may have seen that I made an announcement that I was looking for sponsors for this video. My cat Tantrum, the fluffy himbo star of the unicorn hunting video, has surgery next week. Now don't worry, it's nothing serious, he just has to get a couple of teeth removed. However, the surgery itself is expensive. It can run anywhere between $800 and $1,200. I do still have my stimulus check, the last one that we got. Thanks, Biden. But it was definitely going to be one of those things that was going to clear out my savings, and everything was going to be really tight this month. So I put out this offer that if people gave me money for this video, I would give them some kind of shout out, talk about their business, whatever they wanted, just for some kind of donation. And we ended up raising $400, which is amazing. So first of all, let me just say thank you all so much. Obviously, this isn't like a classical sponsorship, but I did still at least want to make that announcement and make that very clear, because I know YouTube can be a little funky on some of those rules. There was no contract signed, there's no brand deal or anything like that, but these are people who helped to sponsor me and my fluffy cat through a bit of a tricky month, and I really appreciate that. So, with that lengthy explanation out of the way, let's talk about some of the things our sponsors want me to talk about. So to start off, my good friend Brittany, who is an amazing librarian, asked me to shout out public libraries, which fuck yeah, I'll shout out a public library. Are you kidding me? Libraries are great. I certainly can't speak to the entire country, but libraries in my area have remained open during this pandemic. They've been a great resource for people who are looking to pass the time with books or even DVDs. Not to mention, there are nerds like me who have been using resources from them to educate and work on educational material. And also, you can buy books from libraries sometimes, like book sales. They are the best. You can get tons of books for super cheap. Definitely amazing. Plus, a lot of local libraries typically have programs that help the youth and just people in the community have enrichment courses and help them just learn computer basic skills and all kinds of cool stuff. Sometimes they do things like helping to do resumes or have book clubs. It can be really, really interesting. So definitely support your local library today. And now our next sponsor, whose thing I got already here because I don't want to screw this up. Best Self Life Coaching is a fresh new way to help you get from where you are now to where you dream of being. BSLC was developed by Kel McGillis because she is passionate about helping, I hit a button, don't mind me. She is passionate about helping people grow and move forward. She has used her personal and professional experiences as well as years of study and work to build this program and create a resource just for you. Is trauma, mental health, or chronic illness holding you back from your goals? Is fear of reaction to your sexuality or relationship style preventing you from living your life with freedom? Do you feel that your communication skills or confidence are keeping you from healthy relationships or achieving your purpose? Your new life coach, Cal, is ready to help you work through and release the issues that are holding you back and preventing you from moving forward towards peace and satisfaction with your life. She wants to help you find, feel, and be your best self. You can find her on Facebook at bestselflifecoaching or email her at bestselflifecoaching@gmail.com. Send her a message today and learn how she can support you on your journey to embracing your best self. And of course, all of that information will be available down below. Now, honestly, the vast majority of people who donated did so out of the kindness of their hearts because I know the sweetest, best beans ever. So I do want to just give a really quick shout out to Michael, Honey, Nick, Jeff, and of course, Jack. Bia! Full extra bia in there for you, buddy. Since all of these beans are being so generous and so sweet, I decided that I would like to take the opportunity to shout out something in my area that I think really needs some more attention brought to it, and that is what is going on with the Preble Street Resource Center. For those of you who don't know, Preble Street Resource Center is very well known in my community here in Portland, Maine, as being a place that helps those who are most vulnerable and need assistance, especially during this pandemic. As you may be aware, the homeless population here in Portland was hit especially hard by the pandemic. I forget the exact numbers, but the death toll was actually very high there. We also saw an increase in homelessness and unemployment in the past year, so of course that population has grown. Homelessness in veterans has actually gone up 84% in the last year, and the time it takes for someone who is unhoused to find shelter has almost doubled. In the meantime, we also have seen a decrease in many shelters as smaller shelters have been hit very hard and some of them have had to close. Preble Street Resource Center has continued to stay open and has actually been working on creating more resources and more shelters in the area so that way there is more space and resources for those people that need it. Unfortunately, it is an uphill battle. Currently, there is a proposed moratorium that the City Council will be deliberating on June 7th that would halt an emergency temporary shelter that's being made in the Bayside area. As somebody who once actually was homeless, I know how much your own survival can depend on the compassion and care of other people. Our population, our vulnerable Mainers, no matter what their situation is, deserve respect during this time. So I am encouraging anybody that watches this to please contact the Portland, Maine City Council. That information will be down below. I'll also try to include some kind of email or something if that helps to have a template. If you reach out to them, make sure that you're telling them to vote no on the moratorium. They had a vote on it, it was really close, and then they delayed it to June 7th. This video should be coming out before then. All Mainers deserve respect, resources to get through this time, and compassion. So please message City Council today. Please join me and Tantrum by saying thank you, sponsors, in the comments below. Now, let's talk about rules. Rules are definitely the black sheep of this list. 99% of the time when I see somebody dissing boundaries or agreements, what they actually are describing are rules. Rules are imposed on another person without their feedback. You remember how I talked about earlier how a good boundary never affects another person's behavior, is never enforced upon them? Well, it might help to think of a rule as being the opposite of this. A rule is when a person and or persons dictate how another person coming into that situation, whatever that might be, must act in order to be allowed to stay. The person having the rule put upon them doesn't get a say on it. They have to accept it or not. If for any reason they are allowed to discuss it or maybe make a compromise, they are no longer dealing with a rule. It's actually now an agreement. Let's look at our ever-expanding smoking example. It started with, I don't date smokers. Then it turned into, we agree not to smoke. And now, as a rule, that might look like telling somebody coming into our apartment or someone we might want to have a triad with, you can't smoke. This is something I kind of skirted around a little bit in my unicorn hunting video, but I never really wanted to take the time to stop and slow down and explain all of this. This is a problem we see in that situation quite a bit. The unicorn hunters, the starting couple, tend to come up with agreements between the two of them of how they want that relationship to expand. Then anybody coming into that situation has rules imposed on them about how they have to act. This is why unicorn hunters have such a hard time finding somebody, because not many people want to be in a relationship where they didn't get to have any feedback on how it's going to work. And of course, if you try to explain this to unicorn hunters, they get really pissy. They start saying, oh, this is our boundaries. What are you talking about? And then it becomes a whole conversation about linguistics, and it's just really frustrating. Rules in general have this problem. They tend to create hierarchies and power imbalances, because if the person coming into the situation has to agree to this rule that they did not get a chance to create, then they have demonstrably less power in that situation than the people who made the rule. Now, here's where I'm going to get a little controversial. I personally do not think that all rules are bad. I think sometimes they serve very important purposes. If somebody had a rule that all guests must take off their shoes before walking across their living room floor, that would be kind of a weird thing for me to argue against, because it's their house. If I don't like it, I can just stand outside and talk through the window like a weirdo. Actually, that's not so weird anymore these days, is it? Thanks, COVID. And I do think that sometimes there may be a very good reason for rules to exist in a non-monogamous relationship. Okay, let me set the scene for you. A partner's nesting partner, the person that they live with, is pregnant and due any day now. They then meet somebody else that they kind of like and are hitting it off with. That person may have a rule with that other person coming into the situation that you need to be okay with the fact that I might have to drop everything with a moment's notice because my partner might go into labor. I think that's a really reasonable rule. It's a baby. You have to prioritize babies. They just come out. Another non-romantic example of a rule that I personally agree with quite a bit could be a daughter telling her mother that unless she uses the right pronouns and stops using her dead name, she's no longer allowed to be in her life. This rule could be worded as, you will respect my identity. If you're having a hard time keeping boundaries and rules straight in your head, it might help to think about who is the one making the statement and who is the person who ultimately has to act upon it. For example, if I have a boundary that says I don't date smokers, I am the one who ultimately is doing the action, and I'm also the one making the statement. Ergo, it's a boundary. On the other hand, if I say you can't smoke because I don't date smokers, that's actually a rule. Because yes, I am the one saying it, but you are the one who ultimately has to take action. I have occasionally run into people who claim that having boundaries or agreements is just silly because eventually people screw up or are gonna cross them anyway. Sometimes they even say that boundaries agreements are really just rules in disguise, so what's even the point? And to those people I say, well, aren't you just full of sunshine? First of all, as I said earlier, I truly believe that every single human on the planet has boundaries. It's just some of them might not be explicitly stated, or maybe they just suck at enforcing them. If you've ever said no, that's a boundary. As for agreements, I truly do not believe it's possible to have a relationship with another human without them. I have friends who do not speak to members of their family anymore. They don't speak to mothers, siblings, fathers, what have you, because they could not agree upon behaviors to have around each other, or else were unwilling to accept rules dictated to them. This is a very common story for queer children. An out and proud lesbian may decide to no longer be around their family because the family wants them to not be so open about being gay or not allow their girlfriend to come by. Because of this lack of agreed upon behavior, there is no relationship. As for the argument that boundaries and agreements are doomed to fail because humans make mistakes anyway, I say, so? Seriously, this is kind of a weird counterpoint to me. Yes, people make mistakes. Sometimes boundaries or agreements are crossed or broken, but I don't think just not having conversations about these or pretending like you don't have any boundaries at all is going to keep hurt feelings from happening. In fact, I think it could even help to mitigate hurt feelings, as since you've already had this more in-depth discussion, you understand that your partner or whoever didn't try on purpose to cross their boundaries. It was just a mistake. In fact, it could even lead to a more meaningful discussion around maybe adjusting the agreements or adjusting your own boundaries and expectations. I hate having my feet touched. Hate it. Feels like torture to me. Really, really hate it. So anytime I'm in a relationship with someone that might involve a physical element, I usually make sure to go out of my way to tell them, hey, please do not touch my feet. I really don't like it. Now, obviously, mistakes happen sometimes. Like if I'm cuddling with someone, sometimes their foot brushes against mine and it doesn't feel good for me. However, a good person who respects me and actually cares about my feelings will pull their foot away immediately and go, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Only an asshole would say to me, well, I'm just gonna accidentally brush your foot anyway, so what's the point? The point is that I asked you not to do that. And if you're putting in a genuine effort not to, I'm more likely to forgive you for the mishaps that do happen. And more than likely, if someone reacted that way, we're done. Just whatever that relationship is. As with anything, there can be bad actors, toxic chuckle fucks, and abusers who can and will use this to their own use. Weaponizing boundaries and sneaking in ultimatums has happened and will happen sometimes for sure. Abusers in particular are really apt at using language to make their victims feel less empowered and to make themselves seem the more reasonable party. And I do think this is a legitimate concern to have and to be aware of. As somebody who was once in a less than ideal relationship myself, I know better than some how easy it can be for your concern over another person's autonomy to be twisted in such a way that your own no longer matters. But I don't think the answer is to just get rid of all of this. This feels like the nuclear option to me. Instead, I think what we need is to be self-aware enough and confident enough to recognize how these words are supposed to be used and to call out that kind of behavior when we see it. Words and our relationships to them can be really complex and honestly very personal. I've tried to explain throughout this video my own understanding of these words, which have come from multiple sources, from polyam discussion roundtables and memes and listening to multiple podcasts. But somebody watching this might have a different understanding of those words. There could be a person right now screaming at their laptop, but mainly Mandy, my Aunt Lydia taught me a different way to understand agreements. And I'm not here to combat that. That is why, honestly, the best thing we can do with these words, or really just words like this in general, is to have conversations about it. Just sit down with people and say, hey, what does an agreement mean to you? And then discuss it. Honestly, so many problems in relationships could just be solved if we opened our stupid mouths and just talked at each other. Well, that's it. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed this and found the information helpful for you. I know it's a little bit different from what I have been doing for the last couple videos, but I thought it'd be interesting to try something up, mix it up. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to be put into a box. I like to try all kinds of different things. Remember to like, share this video, write in the comments down below, give me examples of agreements, boundaries, and even rules in your own relationships. I'm honestly really interested to see how people feel about all this. My next full video essay is going to be a long one. It's going to be a bit of a beast. It's also going to be a little bit of a departure of what we've been talking about so far, but it's something I'm really excited to make, and I think you all are going to like it. However, it is a beast, as I said, so just be prepared that it might not come out until closer to like mid-July, maybe even the end. Kind of depends. I will try to get that out in a timely manner, though. I really, really appreciate all y'all's patience. All y'all's patience. I can say words. Now, I'm gonna just go ahead and let y'all find your way to the door. I'm sure you can find it again. I have something I need to go take care of. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Oh, hey, it just occurred to me, this is coming out at the beginning of June, so happy Pride, y'all. Be gay, do crimes. Make mommy proud. Ooh, I don't like calling myself mommy. That feels weird.